Hello and welcome to the new episode of High Tech Low Code Podcast. For today's episode, we are joined by Steve Collins and Gary Williams as our co-hosts. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
Hi Mario, this is Gary. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. I'm looking forward to hearing from our guest that you've lined up for us today.
Hi Mario, Steve here. Yeah, thanks very much. Again, really looking forward to our discussion today. Thanks.
Today's topic, we're going to talk about Power Apps, Microsoft take on low code. And to help us with that, we have the company of Chris Huntingford, Partner Technical Architect at Microsoft. Chris has a considerable amount of experience in IT. He's a tinkerer, a passionate problem solver, magic maker, and has a bonus, he likes Hawaiian shirts. Let's start this podcast by asking Chris if he can tell us a bit about himself.
Cool. Thanks, Mario. So first of all, thanks for having me, fellas. This is really exciting. So any opportunity I can to talk about Power Platform, I take it, right? So that's the first thing. But yeah, I'm really impressed that you got through that initial introduction without getting tongue-tied, because it's when I read it back to myself, I'm like, wow, should I have written that? But yeah, so I'm Chris. I'm South African living in the UK, which is pretty awesome. I work for Microsoft as a partner technical architect. So basically, I get to talk to partners about building and leveraging Power Platform, and creating these amazing solutions, which is really, really fun. But yeah, background, I used to work for part of Borland writing code in the fleet division. And, I really got interested in development from quite a young age. And yeah, somehow landed up in doing Dynamics at a partner in South Africa, then moved over here and then found the Power Platform on its inception. So it's been super fun learning and understanding how everything fits together. And yeah, honestly, I just, if you haven't tried it out, I'd highly recommend it. It's just a great way. I call it digital Lego. There we go.
Love it.
That's the remnants of the Lego spaceship that was destroyed by children. So yeah, that's me.
Hi Chris, this is Gary. Thanks for joining us today and taking some time out of your schedule. We're obviously going to focus this podcast on Microsoft Power Apps. And so as a great start, can you give us an overview of what Power Apps is, who it's aimed at? Yeah,
so it's an interesting question, right? And Power Apps is part of actually a wider platform called the Power Platform. So the Power Platform takes functionality from Microsoft service areas, so like from Azure, from Modern Workplace, and from business applications, and then sort of democratizes it in a more palatable fashion for people to use and leverage in their business. Power Apps is effectively the app generation or the app development framework that lives within the Power Platform, okay? But when we talk about Power Apps, there's a couple of things that are quite important here. It's not just the application framework. There's a lot more to it, right? With things like connectors connecting up to the wider Microsoft stack and other solutions. So the example is, I could quite easily build an application that augments Salesforce functionality, right? Which is pretty awesome. So we're all about building stuff. The other thing that's really key is with Power Apps, within the Power Apps logo or brand, we've also got a lot of artificial intelligence built in. So leveraging artificial intelligence tools to sort of allow people to build up apps more smoothly. And also we talk about our own data platform called the Common Data Service. So within Power Apps, there is kind of a lot more to it than just an app dev framework. And that's the message I try and get across to everyone. So see it as a really great way to rapidly build and develop solutions. So I don't call them apps anymore, call them solutions, because there's lots of bits. And it gives you a great way to snap those digital Lego bricks together to create a really amazing functionality. And supercharged with data, Power Apps is absolutely invincible. See what I did there? Absolutely. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thanks, Chris. So Steve here. So as a follow-on question, I've sort of been working with low-code technologies to different companies for quite a few years now, and there tends to be some sort of technical hurdles we have to sort of meet in terms of either connectivity or functionality. Now, where do you see sort of the biggest sort of technical challenges with Power Apps, and what does the roadmap look like in terms of how things are going to develop in sort of the near term?
So when you say technical challenges, are you talking about things in the product that need to be sort of further enhanced to be considered?
Yeah, and considerations when you're thinking about architecting a solution with the Power Platform, things to look at, things to be aware of, just to make sure everything runs smoothly, really.
Awesome question. Yeah, so definitely, I'll say the first one, the most important thing to take into account when building out in any app development framework is where your data lives. So an app without data is basically an instruction manual, right? And that's the key thing. So data for me is probably the most important part. So hurdle number one is where are you going to put that data? Hurdle number two is once you've figured out where you're going to put the data, it's then around kind of saying, well, what's the process that the app, what is the problem that the app's solving right now? You brought up a great one there with saying offline. That's really important, right? Because here's the thing. If you build out an application that goes offline and you need to have data while the app's offline and you use a highly relational data structure, you have to be very careful about what data you're bringing on board because your device will limit you, right? So that's really key. So offline, you do have to take into account, you do need to understand and consider the type of data you're bringing offline, okay? The other one, and the one that I struggle with probably the most is around user experience. So I always say to people, I build very functional apps, which basically means I build ugly apps. And it's not because I have no talents, I just have no taste. So effectively, when you're building out solutions, it's one of the hurdles to take into account. I always say to people, especially with Power Apps, Canvas apps, and there actually are different types of Power Apps, but I'm stating that. With Power Apps, Canvas apps, as an example, you can make the icon cornflower blue, but you have to take in things like accessibility. You have to take into account things like the user journey. And I think you guys know, you've got great experience with other low-code, no-code providers. The actual functionality in the app is probably about 1/3 of the battle. The other 2/3 of the battle are around getting people to use it and understanding that user experience. So that's one of the big ones. So it's definitely, it's not a hurdle. I just think that's in general something you have to be careful of. And then one of the other ones I'd say is that when you're building out solutions, especially in Power Apps, Canvas apps, right? The concept behind building out pre-built sets of functionality, we call them components, but think of it as like, snapping a bunch of Lego bricks together that you're going to use over and over again. It's understanding those and clearly understanding them and when to use them. So it's pointless having a component for something that you're only ever going to use once. Components are meant to be reusable. So you get yourself into a thing called components Armageddon. The way I'd like to explain it to you is think about tipping over the Lego box right in front of you and looking for that one brick. So you've got to be really smart about how you build those out. So you avoid the component Armageddon. There are obviously other challenges that have come up, but for me, those are the ones that I've found really, really have surfaced multiple times, and especially around UX. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I suck at building pretty apps. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, and just in terms of my own experience, I agree. Architecture for the largest builds and getting the user adoption there and measuring it, so that the key things for success. So, what a little bit of perhaps, obviously, the roadmap and where you see Power Platform going in terms of the tech stack. Obviously, you've got a lot of integration points of all the different components of Microsoft already, which is really powerful. But where do you see that sort of going in the short term?
Oh man, so the one thing I think is going to happen. So now, obviously, I am NDA'd on some stuff, so I'm going to give you an opinion around where I think it's going to go. So first of all, inside Power Apps in particular, we've got different application types. Okay, so we've got Canvas apps, which are it looks like Excel and PowerPoint had a love child. That's the only way I can explain them, right? Then you've got model apps, which come from Dynamics, and effectively those are like really awesome at being robust line of business solutions. And then you've got these Power Apps portals, right? Now, what I'm starting to see is there's been I'm going to frame this in the best way possible, a consolidation of user experience when building these solutions out. So I think in the future, you're probably not going to have Canvas apps, model apps, and portals. I think they'll be framed as something else, right? Which is epic, because then you have the flexibility that the Canvas app gives you, but then the true robust nature of the model app. And that's what it's designed to do. And with that, I feel like that would make it absolutely bulletproof. So from that perspective, that's what I'm hoping for. The one I really want to focus on, which is super important, is around the connectors. And for me, Power Platform, Power Apps, Power whatever we use, right, is nothing without those connectors. And I think that even when making comparison against some of those other amazing low-code, no-code solutions out there, there's loads out there. I think that the connectors are really something that set us apart. And I really feel like a lot of investment is going into building out that connector market. And think about it, when you're building out an app, especially Canvas apps, the app is only as good as the connector you're using effectively. And this is also kind of an architectural thing. So I'm kind of hitting 2 points here. So think about it like the more options and the more functionality you have in the connector, the less you have to build into the app, right? So that's where I think those connectors will get a lot more loving. And then also you're doing a lot less sort of technical debt by using the expression language within Canvas apps. So that's where I'm hoping it'll go. The other thing I also know is going to happen, and like this is an absolute must, is that our data platform, the Common Data Service, that's getting a lot, like tons of investments. And basically, we're hoping people are going to be putting their data in there rather than sticking it into Excel. We know what happens when you get Excel Armageddon. But that's what we're hoping for. So, you know, I think from the Power Platform journey perspective, that's where we'll be. And I think that, you know, the more sort of digital Lego bricks they add to the box of functions and components and things we can do, the better. And, you know, I think that's going to change in the next sort of year or so. So I'm excited, and I hope you guys are as well.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for that, Chris.
Cool.
Yeah, I love the comparison with the Lego bricks, because I do relate with the finding that one little part that is inside of the box full of Legos. That was amazing.
You know what, Mario, I'm going to tell you this. It's like I was playing Lego with my kids the other day. And for some reason, the Power Platform gets denoted back to Lego at some point. Like I'm a proper nerd. But like I reckon we probably spent about an hour trying to find a brick that I was holding in my hand.
Or that little part that is underneath another one or attached to another one. Yeah, it's a nightmare. Bringing the conversation a bit more to your side and not just the technology, because now I got really curious. What made you choose a Power Platform? Power Apps has the technology to invest in.
So are you talking about Microsoft or me personally?
You personally.
Yeah, okay. This is actually such a cool question. So I might get a little bit emotional, but so
go for it.
The reason I chose it is because, first of all, I think I'm a people connector. I love people, and I love working with people, and I love trying to enable people to build cool stuff. And working with Dynamics, okay, it's awesome, but it's not for everyone, and that's the thing that I found. Whereas with Power Platform, you know, I've got a friend who was he was doing the check-ins at Heathrow, and he was building apps. And then we proper nerded out. We were like, oh, dude, look at the app that I built. And he's like, oh, man, my app's cooler. And I'm like, yeah, your app is cooler. Right? But that's the thing. So we've got this whole community of people connected around this Power Platform product. Like we've got a virtual pub going on right now where people are hanging out being nerds. I mean, and that pub has been going since the beginning of COVID. And we had 50 people in there the other day, just showing being nerds. And that's the thing. I think with the platform, you know, you're not just buying tech. You're not getting stuck into the tech. Tech is just part of it, guys. What you're really investing in is this whole community of stuff that's going on, like an ecosystem. It's like a neural network of awesome. And what I'm finding so far is that the more I get stuck into this neural network of awesome, I make friends. I find people with the same interests as me. My wife's learning to code now. And that was one of the reasons I chose it. The other reason I chose it is that I love solving problems for organizations. Now, people are like, yeah, you say that on your CV, but actually I do. I love it. I like walking into places and fixing things. Sometimes I do a terrible job. Sometimes I do a great job. I mean, it all depends on the problem. But I found the thing that had the most digital bricks that were available to me to solve the problems was the Power Platform. And the more I got involved, I just kept on uncovering stuff. I said to somebody today, I'm like, dude, you can give me any problem in a business and I will try and fix it with the Power Platform and likely succeed, right? And that's the best part because you can really do anything. And I find that also with the skill set that I have and the interest in data and making data accessible and, you know, being technically inclusive for everyone, I've just found that the platform fitted what I wanted to do. And I have looked at other low-code platforms and you know what? They're all awesome. Like they are really all awesome. But for me, it was the kind of ecosystem within Microsoft and the rest of the connectivity that I got with the platform that really made it awesome for me. So I technically invest my time in educating people, educating myself, and making new friends like you guys. And that's why I chose the platform, not because of tech all the way, but it's also the wider ecosystem.
All right, great stuff. Loved it.
Loved it. It's an exciting subject to talk about, isn't it? If you're that way in mind, I've got a background in mechanical engineering, making something physical, and then I've tried different during my career when I got out of the engineering side of things, tried other things. But the closest thing to making something again for me was developing low code, actually creating something that I could see on the screen really quickly, and it could do things. I could show, look at this, what I've done. I can do this, and you know, I'm in a band, and I created an app to manage all the rehearsals that we were doing and whose turn it was to pay and what songs we were going to do and links to YouTube songs, all that kind of stuff. Really exciting stuff. So it's a really great thing. And on that basis, and clearly you're really into this, I'd be interested to know what your most coolest or interesting solution you've worked on is.
It's not as cool as you think it is, but I'll tell you what it is, and then I'm going to tell you why it's cool, right? So I've done stuff in housing associations in the UK. Now, I think somebody on the call will understand that in housing associations, there is a lot of process and random idiosyncrasies that happen with data. And one of those processes is antisocial behavior. Okay. So now it sounds boring, but let me tell you why I enjoyed working on it. And was able to solve this with the Power Platform. So the first thing was the sort of sensitivity of the information and the data being stored. So I learned about that. I learned about data sensitivity through the housing associations where, sounds terrible and it's not something I like to talk about, but when, social care cases get logged and things like domestic abuse and that stuff goes to court. Like that data goes to courts and the courts need to see all the CRUD access, all the CRUD actions against that data, like create, read, update, delete. And also it's never just one app, it's always a solution, right? So like when we were starting to gather all this data and I started to learn about what was actually going on with the information, I was like, wow. And then the solution got massive. So we had a model-driven app doing the process in the back, in the mid office. So people being able to like capture information, take it through a process, and the processes were massive. And my inner nerd got super excited when I saw this like massive sort of amount of logic that we had to, and not a single drop of code was written, by the way, in this. So it was understanding all the processes, understanding the data. And then my inner nerd also loved the Canvas app piece. So actually building that front end app, because accessibility had to be in there. There was AI, right? So actually classifying records based on information being stored. We had to make the UI spectacular. So the social care people, when they were missioning around, it wasn't like, oh, where is this thing? It's like button, 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 or speak into it and it does stuff. And you can do that with the amazing functionality in Azure. So like building in that AI piece. Also, I learned a lot about sort of usability, right? So the example I'll give you is that it's very easy to have a form with 100 fields that does 100 things. It is way more difficult to have a form with 10 fields that does 100 things. And that means you're baking an automation and AI into the background to make sure this stuff works. So the reason it was cool is that like we had this form that had very basic questions, but we were using AI to assimilate stuff in the background, like understand, patterns, which was really freaking awesome. So like I helped build that. Well, it wasn't just me. Like I actually had that as a learning project. And then I've used that knowledge that I took from that solution, like into other areas. So I've done some stuff in aerospace as well. Can't mention the company name, but it's easy to figure out. But yeah, that was pretty awesome in Power Platform. And also a couple of other interesting little things. So I build out these funky little apps. So I built out a UFO spotter, turning UFOs into IFOs, identified flying objects using AI. It's proper nerdy, hey, but like it's just fun stuff. But all of it came from that process that I encountered in housing. And I thought that if you can solve a problem like that with this stuff, you can do anything. And that's where I learned. So yeah, I can't think of anything that I couldn't do with the Power Platform just yet.
Yeah, thanks. You touched on it a couple of times now, and it's a thing close to my heart where you talk about actually creating the application itself, or the solution is part of it, but it's the user experience, understanding what the user needs to see and when, and making sure that data flows. And it's interesting that it's something that's been close to me. You've mentioned it a couple of times.
Yeah, it's honestly, Gary, it's something that like I don't think I'll ever be really good at.
Yeah.
I'm learning. So I'm learning. My friend Keith Watling, he used to work at Arriva Buses. He always says to me, keep it small, keep it precise. Like you don't need to have a giant thing. And for me, I put everything's rainbow colored. I think that the more color you have, the better. And he's like, think about your tones. Oh, man, honestly, I respect the fact that you get that because it's just something that completely bypasses me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. That's really interesting. I know from I did a similar project in social housing, and and getting users to behave how you want them to behave is one of the biggest parts of the problem to fix, isn't it? You can create the best app in the world, but they can still go back to their manual ways of doing things, and it doesn't really change the business. So that's really great.
You're on the money, man. And you understand now that like that complexity with building out something like that, because it's huge, but it's fun.
Yeah, it is. And the thing I've always liked about this space is you actually get to really understand real world business problems. that you wouldn't. Yeah, and it's just really good to actually see those being sort of fixed and achieved really quickly with these types of technologies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so leading on to that, I mean, I think one of the challenges that we're seeing is that people are moving more from traditional coding to low-code, no-code solutions. But then there's not all the resources there for people to actually then take advantage of those technology stacks. So if you were like a new person starting out in IT and wanted to get into the Power Platform, Power Apps, where would you sort of suggest people start and enable themselves?
So I have an opinion, and it's because the reason I'm going to explain to you guys like this, I'm not very good at reading stuff. I've got the attention span of a squirrel, right? And I've found a lot of makers are quite similar. So the Microsoft Learn site has got some amazing information on it. So there is a Learn site that we provide with loads of courseware and stuff. However, what I learned is that I needed to get hands-on. And you guys will know from your low-code, no-code experience, it's kind of like the quicker you start fumbling around with those bricks, those little digital bricks, the easier it is to pick up the platform. So I always say to people, do your level best to get hands-on immediately. Like if you go to portal.office.com, you press enter, you will see Power Apps, the Power Apps logo in your Office 365 table, right? Click on it. Just do it. Don't think, just click, right? And when you go in there, you'll start finding links to other tutorials and things. So there are videos out there. There's some amazing, so in Microsoft, we have these folks called MVPs who are really, really great at collaborating and building out content and sharing it. So not like in here's a book you need to read mode. It's more like, here's a video, watch this, mimic what I'm doing. There's another thing you can do also. It's called App in a Day. And it is a brilliant way to actually learn the process to build a couple of Power Apps and using the Common Data Service. So I would say the way that we found it works best is hands-on, run through the walkthrough labs, and then go ahead and read stuff. But also the community, like if you go onto Twitter and you type in #PowerAddicts, you'll get millions of people building this stuff. Just look around. Like you'll find tons of tutorials. And then obviously there are other YouTube channels out there that you can follow, like the Power Apps team have a YouTube channel. So if you just pop into YouTube and look for Power Apps, you'll find a bunch of stuff in there that will help. But hands-on first. That's rule number one. Rule number two is then build your knowledge. But yeah, go to portal.office.com, look for Power Apps, click it, and just get stuck in. You can't break anything because remember, here's the key thing with the Power App. A Power App doesn't magically give you access to data. Okay, so you can't really break the data if you don't have the access. So you can tinker away, my friends. Go nuts.
Yeah, that's really good. And I'm probably the same. If you can show me a video or how to, and I can copy. That's the way I learn best, by doing rather than being stuck in lots of books for hours on end and not getting actually any hands-on or anything. I can't
read. I mean, I genuinely cannot sit in front of like a screen with text on it and read it without wanting to do something else.
Yeah, and I think your approach in terms of just try things, especially when we're trying to actually enable a wider community, is really important, because you can't always be have a developer mindset. You want to actually enable people with a business mindset. They know the business problem and just make it easy for them to solve it. Spot
on. I always tell people, you're going to laugh at this, I always say Power Apps is kind of like Tinder for business and IT. What? I'm like, thinking about it, because business, you can get them to build out these really kick-ass solutions and not like break anything, but with IT, you just get them to set up the digital guide rails in the background. So you're like, okay, dudes, just put data loss prevention policies in, like don't let, Jeff in accounts post out a tweet every single time he gets a sales lead. You don't do that, right? But if you set those up, it's a sweet match made in heaven.
Perfect.
You were saying that, so having a guitar like that is a good icebreaker?
Yeah. So on a hackathon the other day, I was just chilling here and they were like, can you just like plug in your amp and play every single as an alarm for them when the time is up? I'm like, oh, you don't want that. And that's what happened.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Chris, can you do that?
No.
Chris, can you do that? Come on. You walked right into it.
All right, hang on. I don't actually. Right, let's see. I don't actually know if I've got a new pedal. So I'm kind of.
Mario, we can get Chris to create an intro for our podcast so we can play each time.
There you go. The three of you can join together.
So I don't think I was know. You got a thing called a rat pedal. Have you seen them?
No.
Oh, Bonkers. Okay, so like normal and clear, it's okay, I'll check this out. It's crazy, eh?
That's awesome.
Playing a band then, Chris? Chris, do you play in a band with all that gear?
It was pretty cool. Thank you for doing that.
I generally can't behave myself. I'm sorry, guys.
That's the best way to go about. White conform. So, a few final thoughts. What's your vision for the future of the software development? How do you think it might look like in, I don't know, 10 years?
So a lot of people don't like my opinion on this, but I don't think custom development will ever go anywhere. I'll tell you why. I think that low code, no code is really important to sort of get subject matter experts building stuff. And, using those digital bricks to create solutions is really key, but you still need people to make those digital bricks, right? And that's the key thing. So I think pro coders, people that love to write code, will always have a space. They'll never go anywhere because you need those people to write the engine effectively. And I love that because now I can go to anyone and talk to them about the platform and talk to them about app dev and, say to them, it doesn't matter who you are, you can get stuck in. And that's the best thing, the pro coders. I remember when I used to write code, I did not care about a user interface. I hated it. I was like, I hated doing forms. It was the thing that I literally detested. It was the last thing. Now I'm like, hey guys, you don't have to do forms anymore. And then you can see them having a little party in their heads. So I always think that with software dev in the future, there will always be space for all types of people. We're just getting better at telling people that now. And I think that's really key. Yeah. So the message I would have for anyone that's even remotely thinking about getting into a platform, go and look at a no-code platform, learn it. Obviously, we'd love you to look at PowerApps, but there's other ones you can try out, like OutSystems, Mendix, Salesforce Lightning. But if you're a pro coder, do the same thing and start thinking about how to build the engine for us no-coders to use. And we'll thank you by taking all that horrible form design away from you. So yeah, that's what I reckon.
It's actually a pretty good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
This was actually more on competition and way. So, I mean, having sort of had a chance to look just in the fundamental course at Power Platform, I can see
Awesome, yeah.
already the differentiators between the traditional low code. And I think the market's maturing as well. So my perception is the Mendixes and the OutSystems of the world are very powerful, but to be really proficient at them, you've really got to have a good architectural development background to get the most from it, because it's taking you away from doing traditional coding, but it's not really a fully WYSIWYG no-code type platform. Where do you sort of see Power Platform in relation to some of these other platforms, and how would you sort of position it?
Yeah, I mean, Steve, that's an awesome question. So I get asked it a fair amount. I'm not going to claim to be an expert in Mendix and OutSystems and that. I mean, I know I was looking at Honeycode the other day, actually, and I get the core fundamentals around the app build idea, but I kind of feel like with Power Platform, it's very much around the whole landscape, right? So like the connectors and the data and the automation functionality. And that's where I feel it really shines. I still think, if I'm honest, I still think Canvas Apps has got a little bit of a way to go in the app build. So I think that they could add more components. But you know what? I'll tell you something interesting. Like a year ago, I was on a beta program, and I remember just opening up Canvas Apps and I saw this thing called mixed reality. I'm like, sick. So I added it to the form. I built a measuring app in minutes with mixed freaking reality embedded in the app. I was like, wait. So my theory is that, we're adding more stuff to it, right? I do think that the app build does kind of stack up, but I think it's more than that. I think it's the whole ecosystem. And you made a great point, and this is kind of the discussion we were having before. I don't think that you're going to find very many people going or anymore. I think there's going to be a lot of ands. So you might use one low-code platform to do something super good, like public-facing apps, but then you might use another low-code platform to do your data structures. And that's what I'm hoping for. I would really like to work with other sort of vendors in that to bottom out this build problem that we have. We've got the great developer shortage at the moment. We're just humming away for people that we can't find. So they have to learn. And I think that whatever platform you use, as long as you're doing low code, that's cool. but we'll try them all. And I'm a culprit of that. I've got to learn. I've got to go get into OutSystems and build an app. And I've got to go get into Mendix and build an app. But I love the Power Platform. It's just the thing that I've found that checks all my boxes. So I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And I think the interesting thing about this whole marketplace is that there's new entrants coming in all the time. All the vendors, including Microsoft, are developing and improving. So it's an exciting space to be in.
Oh, I love it. I genuinely do love it. And I like speaking to people like you guys because, you know, you've been around for a little while longer. You understand these platforms better than a lot of other people. And for the newbies, you know, we're effectively trailblazing this stuff. And that's the thing I think that's important. So as long as we just keep on sharing stuff like this and getting people educated, you know, it's all gold.
Yeah, and if you can convert the traditional guys into low-code guys, and then it just allows them to do a lot more. I remember working on a project where I had to go in and pitch the low-code solution I was selling to hardcore C# developers. And you go in there and you've got sort of that sort of, like you're doing now, lean back, cross the arms, you know, we don't need this stuff in here, type of approach.
Yeah.
But by the time they got into it, I was getting like messages on a Sunday afternoon going, how do I do this? I've got stuck at this point. I want to try this out, because it becomes infectious, doesn't it?
It's just fun. It's fun. Yeah. Like I had the same thing as you, man. I sat in front of a customer. They were home selling customer, or home builders, whatever. And they were hardcore C# devs, and we showed them how to build out solutions. And I built a thing called Plot Matcher using Canvas apps and Common Data Service, and it just uses filters. It's like an advanced search sort of thing, and it was cool, hey. And they were like, "Oh no, I'm not so sure I like this. You know, can it be trusted?" I'm like, "Well, I hope so," and it can, because it's come such a long way. So yeah, I mean, look, for those of you that are writing code and think that this isn't for you, see it as just another arrow in your quiver. That's all it is. You know, just keep on adding stuff to the things you're learning, and as long as you're learning, that's the important part.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess it's time for us to wrap up. That's all we have for today's episode. Thank you very much, everyone, for being able to join us and taking time off your schedule to participate in our podcast.
Oh, Mario, I appreciate the time, fellas. And yeah, have an awesome evening. And yeah, let's catch up again soon. Good roll, fellas.
Cheers.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.
And with that, we wrap up. Thanks for listening. I hope you join us on our next episode of High Tech Low Code Podcast, where we'll feature another guest and approach yet another topic of extreme importance to the tech world. See you soon.